You ever hear a story so wild you think it has to be made up? Well, this one's 100% real, and it all started with a stack of mail. A nosy HOA neighbor and my grandpa, a retired Green Beret who doesn't back down from anybody. So here's what happened. My grandpa had just gotten back from a short trip. Nothing big, just a few days visiting old army buddies. Like always, he asked me to grab his mail, but I was tied up with work and couldn't make it over in time. No big deal, right? He'd just pick it up when he got home. Only ... When he did, the mailbox was empty. Not a single letter. At first, we thought maybe it got held at the post office or delivered late. But something felt off. Then a neighbor quietly told us they saw Karen, and yes, her real name isn't Karen, but the nickname stuck for a reason, rifling through Grandpa's mail and tossing a bunch of it into a trash bag. Now let me tell you something about my grandpa. He served multiple tours, earned his stripes in places most of us couldn't imagine, and built a quiet life afterward. He doesn't go looking for trouble, but he sure as heck won't walk away from it, especially when someone crosses a line, so he calmly went over to Karen's house just to ask what happened. No yelling, no threats, just wanted to clear things up. But instead of owning up to anything, she called the police and said she felt threatened. Within minutes, squad cars pulled up, lights flashing, and then in front of his own house. On his own street, my grandpa was cuffed like he was some kind of criminal. But here's the thing. The officers didn't realize who they were dealing with, or what security footage would later reveal. And trust me, that changed everything. What happened next flipped the whole situation on its head. And Karen definitely didn't see it coming as the officers cuffed my grandpa. I remember standing there frozen, completely stunned. This wasn't some loud, aggressive confrontation. This was my grandpa.com, steady, and just asking a neighbor a simple question. But Karen was crying, waving her hands, saying he intimidated her. And the cops, probably just trying to play it safe, took her word for it. Now, here's some background. Karen's been on the HOA board for a couple of years, and ever since she moved in, she's made it her personal mission to control every blade of grass on our street. She's the type who'll measure your trash can distance from the curb, take pictures of lawn decorations, and send warnings if your garage is open for too long. People try to ignore her, but behind the scenes, she's made life harder for a lot of folks, especially older residents like my grandpa. But here's what she didn't know. My grandpa had installed security cameras months ago, after she accused another neighbor of leaving a suspicious package on her porch. He never trusted that she'd stop at just one complaint, and he was right. The footage clearly showed her walking over to his mailbox, opening it, pulling out the mail, flipping through it, and stuffing it into a plastic grocery bag. No hesitation, no reason, just straight up took it. And this isn't just some small thing. Tampering with someone's mail, especially a veteran's, is a federal offense. But in the moment, no one knew we had the footage. The police were still treating my grandpa like he'd done something wrong. And Karen stood there, arms crossed, watching like she'd won something. It was surreal. How did we get here, from a missed mail pickup to handcuffs and police cars in front of his house? And more importantly, why was Karen so eager to get rid of his mail? Was it just another power move, or was there something in there she didn't want him to see? That part, we didn't figure out until later. And when we did, it raised even more questions. After the cops left with my grandpa still in cuffs, I rushed inside to pull up the footage. I knew we had it clear as day, but in that moment, everything felt upside down. I couldn't believe we even needed to prove that someone stole his mail in the first place. But this wasn't just about the mail anymore. Something deeper was going on. And I could feel it in my gut when I showed the footage to one of the officers. His whole expression changed. He paused, looked at the screen, then looked back at me like he just stepped into a mess he wasn't prepared for. He didn't say much, just that they needed to review everything and follow procedure. But I could tell he knew. This wasn't right. Meanwhile, Karen was still out front, talking to another neighbor like she was the victim in all this. That's when I noticed something strange. She kept glancing at Grandpa's house, not just in a curious way, but almost like she was waiting for something, or watching for someone. Here's where it gets weirder. When we finally got Grandpa home after hours at the station and a ton of phone calls, he went straight to his desk drawer and started looking through his files. A bunch of important documents were gone. Letters from the VA, a few checks, even a renewal notice for his veterans' health care. All stuff that had been mailed that same week. All stuff that could mess up his benefits if it got delayed or lost. We realized this wasn't just some petty HOA drama. This was targeted. And Karen knew more than she was letting on. One of the neighbors, a quiet guy named Rick, came by later and told us he'd seen Karen in Grandpa's yard a few days before he got back. She was bending near the mailbox like she dropped something, but now we're thinking she was snooping. Rick didn't think much of it then, but now it's all lined up. Something was off, and whatever Karen was after, it wasn't just mail. We were only starting to uncover the layers. The truth was darker than we thought. The more we looked into it, the more things stopped adding up. My grandpa called the VA the next morning to check on the missing mail, and that's when things really started to spiral. Turns out, someone had already called in pretending to be him, asking about changes to his address and trying to reroute his benefits. Luckily, the VA flagged it because something felt off in the call, but that's when it hit us. This wasn't just Karen being petty over mail. This was something bigger. Someone was trying to steal his 10 effect. My only lipstick was Holy/Ruby Kiss. Ruby Kiss, Ruby Kiss. Only Ruby Kiss has the luxurious texture that glides on Smolix last. And a lovely appease, we are soon solid to see. It's a wheeze of side up plays. We are side of Solix/she, we are seleptic recive. Identity and all signs kept pointing back to Karen. We started piecing it all together. The missing checks, the VA forms, her weird behavior, the way she reacted when Grandpa confronted her. This wasn't random. It felt planned. She had access through her HOA position, probably knew who lived alone, who traveled often, and who might not catch on right away if mail went missing. I started digging through HOA emails and public notices, and guess what? Karen had recently pushed for a neighborhood security review, where she asked residents to submit personal contact details for emergency purposes. It sounded official, even helpful, but it was just another way to gather more information. At this point, the police were re-reviewing everything, but it felt like things were moving slow. Too slow. We didn't know how much damage had already been done, or what else Karen had gotten her hands on. Grandpa, even after all he'd been through in the military, looked more stressed than I'd ever seen him. He wasn't worried about himself. He was angry that someone would try to pull this kind of stunt on an old veteran. Someone who served his country and just wanted peace. Then, 2 nights later, our doorbell rang around 11 p.m. We weren't expecting anyone, and when we checked the camera, Karen was standing there, pacing back and forth, looking nervous. She wasn't holding mail. She wasn't yelling. She looked scared. And that's when we realized something had flipped. But whether she was there to confess or cover her tracks, we had no idea. We didn't open the door right away. Watching Karen from the camera feed, pacing and checking over her shoulder, set off every alarm in my head. This wasn't the smug, confident HOA board member we'd seen before. Something had clearly shaken her. My grandpa stood behind me, arms crossed, saying nothing, but his eyes were locked on the screen. After a minute, she knocked again, softer this time. Then she leaned in and said something barely audible through the mic. "They know I took it. I didn't know what was in it." That hit us both hard. Who was they? And what didn't she know? We cracked the door just enough to speak through the chain. Karen looked pale, makeup smudged, hair a mess like she hadn't slept. She glanced behind her as if expecting someone else to show up. She wasn't there to fight or argue. She wanted to talk. She said someone had offered her money. A guy claiming to be with a private property firm that needed to locate veteran-owned properties with financial vulnerabilities. That's all she said, he told her. In exchange, she just had to report when certain neighbors were away and gather anything that looked important, especially financial or government-related. Mail, she swore she didn't know it was identity theft. Said she thought it was just some shady property investors looking for foreclosures. But now she claimed this man had started threatening her when she asked questions. Said he knew where her daughter went to school. That's why she was at our door, not to apologize, not even to come clean. She was scared for her life. My grandpa didn't say a word. He turned and walked to his desk drawer again, pulling out something I hadn't seen before, a small stack of letters. Sealed, marked with a strange return address that hadn't come through the mailbox. That's when he muttered, mostly to himself, "This goes deeper than Karen." And that's when I realized, this wasn't just about mail theft. This was part of something way bigger. And my grandpa might have been the real target all along. Karen sat at the kitchen table, shaking, while Grandpa carefully laid out the strange letters he'd been hiding.